He called me useless in front of everyone. But he didn't know what my father left behind. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 33 years old. Before I tell you what it was, make sure you like and subscribe. Now, let's begin. The night my husband looked me in the eyes and said I was worth nothing was the same night. Everything in my life changed. Because just hours later I would discover something my father left me. Something no one else knew about. And the truth is, if my husband had known even a fraction of it, he never would have said those words. But at that moment I stood there in silence, while everyone around me laughed softly, pretending not to notice the humiliation. And I remember thinking maybe they were right, maybe I really was the one who got nothing. Until I opened that door later that night and realized my father had never intended for me to lose anything at all. 3 weeks after my father passed away, we gathered for the will reading in a quiet office that felt colder than it should have been. My older brother sat confidently beside his wife, already smiling like he knew how this would end. My husband barely looked at me, his attention fixed somewhere else. Like the outcome didn't matter to him because he had already decided what I was worth. And when the lawyer finally began reading the will, everything happened exactly the way I feared. My brother received the family business, the one my father had spent his entire life building, while I was left with something that sounded almost like an afterthought. An old storage warehouse on the edge of the city, a place no one had visited in years. The room went silent for a second before the subtle reactions began. My brother tried to hide his satisfaction, his wife failed completely, and my husband let out a quiet laugh he didn't even try to disguise. I told myself it didn't matter, that property was still property, that maybe there was something I didn't understand yet, but deep down I felt the shift immediately. The way people looked at me, the way the value of who I was seemed to drop in their eyes within seconds. And by the time we drove home, that silence between me and my husband felt heavier than anything that had been said in that room. That night at dinner, things became impossible to ignore because what was supposed to be a small family gathering turned into something else entirely. Halfway through the meal, my husband raised his glass and made a comment that still echoes in my mind about how some people inherit success while others are handed leftovers. And the way everyone reacted told me everything I needed to know, because no one defended me, not even once. I sat there forcing a small smile, pretending it didn't affect me, while inside something was slowly breaking. And when everyone finally left and the house became quiet, he turned to me and said it directly this time. No jokes, no audience, just cold honesty. You bring nothing, he said, and then he added the word that changed everything: useless. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't cry, not in front of him. Instead, I asked him what he wanted me to do, and his answer came without hesitation: go live in that warehouse, if that's what your father thought you deserved. And in that moment I realized this wasn't just anger, this was how he truly saw me. So I packed a small bag that same night, my hands shaking but my mind strangely calm, because something inside me had already made the decision to leave before he could say anything else. The warehouse was about 30 minutes outside the city, surrounded by empty roads and silence that felt almost too heavy when I first arrived. The building looked worse than I imagined: old metal doors, faded paint, broken lights. And for a moment I stood there questioning everything, wondering if this really was all my father had left me. But when I finally stepped inside, something felt off, not wrong, just unexpected. Because despite the outside, the interior was cleaner, more organized, like someone had maintained it recently. I walked further and my footsteps echoing through the space until I reached a small office in the back, where I found a desk that didn't match the rest of the building, new or untouched, and that's when I noticed the drawer slightly open. Inside there were documents, files neatly stacked, and a sealed envelope with my name written on it in my father's handwriting. My hand started shaking as I opened it, because in that moment I knew this was the part no one else had seen. And as I read the first few lines, my entire understanding of everything began to change. The letter explained everything in a way I never expected. Because the warehouse wasn't just a building, it was land, positioned in the center of a future development. Zone, something my father had been planning for years, without telling anyone else. There were contracts inside the files, proposals from companies' offers that were worth more than anything my brother had received from the will. And suddenly every moment from earlier that day felt different. The laughter, the looks, the word useless, it all lost its weight. Because they had judged something they didn't understand. And as I kept reading, I realized my father had done this intentionally. He knew exactly how people would react. He knew who would stay and who would walk away. And in that moment I understood that this wasn't just an inheritance, it was a test. And the person who failed it the fastest was the one who thought he knew my value the most. 2 days later, when my husband called asking if I was ready to come back, I didn't answer right away because I was standing in that same warehouse now, looking at it differently, not as something broken but as something waiting. And when I finally did speak, I realized something had changed inside me. Because the words he used no longer held any power over me. I had already seen the truth, already understood what I had been given, and more importantly, what I had been protected from. And now as I look back at that night, the moment he called me useless, I keep wondering, if he had known what I would find, would he have still told me to leave? Or would he have stayed pretending everything was fine? And that's the question I can't stop thinking about, because if someone only values you when they know what you have, then did they ever value you at all?